stroke of midnight here in Colorado, and I just had to do another live to follow up on yesterday's live because I've been getting real good feedback, and in just reviewing the conversation with folks, I got more to say, man. I think for those who didn't tune into the previous one, it's already off IG. Man, people are jumping in fast here. Wow, holy shit. Yeah, so for those of you who may have missed last night's little live lecture, sermon, whatever you might want to call it, the topic was good and evil, and specifically what good and evil means for spiritual work. And we started talking a little bit about the history of those words, right? And how they came into our lexicon and how they became colored sort of by the church who had, specific intentions with it. So what I want to look at tonight, because I alluded to it a little bit yesterday and I had to research it today. It was gripping my mind, and it ties more in with occultism. And that is when we look at the history of these words in a religious or moralistic context, in English, where the fuck did it come from? And so the King James Bible is where all this comes from, right? Like that's the first English Bible, first book printed on the Gutenberg printing press. That translation happened in the year 1611, all right? If you were tuned in last night, you know that the word evil entered the English language around the year 900, and the word good entered the English language around the year, I said 1400 last night, double checked it, it's 1200. 300-year difference, so they didn't come as a pair of concepts, and that's something to know. So when we think that it's been some time after those words entered the English language with their original meaning until the King James Bible was printed, and when they took on this moralistic meaning of good and evil. And, of course, the first time we encounter it is in Genesis, right? We have the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So let's take a moment, pause, and flip back. Because luckily, that shit wasn't originally written in English. It's in Hebrew. And in Hebrew, we can look a little deeper into what that means, okay? So what is this tree of knowledge of good and evil, okay? In Hebrew, Eitz Hada'at Tov Verah. So what is that? Eitz means tree, Hada'at. This is what's interesting. It means of the knowledge, but it could also mean that the tree knows it. Not that it's giving the knowledge, but that's a whole other grammatical thing. Tov, which we translate as good, and Ra, which we translate as evil. But what do those words mean, okay? So we can look at the Hebrew, and Hebrew is a language that uses word roots. Like every word comes from a 3-letter or 2-letter root that has a core meaning, okay? So we can look at that. So if we look at the word for good, that we translate as good, okay, this is Tov, okay? So what is Tov? Tov means basically like in accord with, in alignment with, and in this specific sense, it means in alignment with God's plan. Now, if you flip back again to what we were talking about yesterday, what does Torah mean? What does law mean? What is God's law? This is not law like human law. This is not rules. This is law like physics. This is law like gravity. Okay, so Tov means good, means that which is in alignment with that law and which perpetuates it. Okay? And Ra, which we translate as evil, means that which works against it. Interesting side note. The rabbis say that this tree or this eating of this fruit didn't give good and evil. They had already existed. This just gave humanity the knowledge of it. As a result of that, right? And again, let's go back to these definitions. As a result of that, this caused man to become aware of his nakedness. That's the first thing, right? Because he could tell the difference. This ultimately verges on Taoism, right? Or any Eastern thought, where duality from that unity of thought is what causes all the trouble in our mind. If you don't know better, you don't know better. But when you start to distinguish, then you can start to have thoughts about these things. Okay, so why is any of this relevant, right? Like, this is all interesting, this is all cool, but why is this relevant to us? Because, again, when we're going back to doing the work, you're talking about these two energies, these two poles. One that is in accord with the sort of creative propagation, we say is positive. And again, break down the word. What does to posit means? To posit means to put forth. So this is the energy that creates. This is the one that is in alignment with the law of God. the energy of creation, okay? And this is, if you're building stuff with your work, if you're putting energy into stuff, you're using positive energy. If you're pushing away, if you're positing, if you're putting forth, okay? By contrast, what is the other side of this? Negative. What does negative mean? It means that which negates. What does negate mean? It means undo. Okay, so if you're pulling back, opening up, undoing, you're using this negative energy. Now, this is really interesting when we're talking about negative, because when we go back to the theology and go back to the words, okay, so who's the opposition of God, the one that puts forth the positive force? Well, that's Satan. Well, what does Satan mean? Shaitan in Arabic, that means the adversary, is how it's often translated, but literally it means the opposition, like the friction, the force that opposes against. So you have the creative force, and then you have this encroaching force against it, okay? And now we get very damn close to Gnosticism, and we get very damn close to Zoroastrianism, which I've spoken on in one of these previous lives. But this idea, and this is in Scripture, because this is the law of the universe. And I should also say, like, this whole idea is that these two forces are codependent in a sense. That's why they say that, like, good and evil existed before man ate the fruit. Those two existed to maintain a balance, okay? And again, good and evil, let's go to positive and negative. That which puts forth and creates, and that which undoes or stymies the creation of or creates chaos within, okay? So now, thinking from this level, we can apply it again to our work. Because we have to tap into these two poles. And, this is rendered perhaps most beautifully by Eliphas Levi. And I recommend his works, The Doctrine and Ritual of High Magic, specifically, so highly. If you haven't read it, read it. You owe it to yourself. No matter what tradition you're working in, no matter whether you're in ritual magic or folk magic, whatever you do, it's brilliant. And he has a brilliant turn of phrase. It's in French, but the most current English edition turns the phrase brilliantly as the science of good and evil. Not the knowledge of good and evil, but the science of good and evil. And this is a completely brilliant rendering for exactly what we do. Again, when we take good and evil as those literal terms, right? As like and dislike, as putting forth and taking away, okay? What we're doing is working in that realm of science. And so he takes the great attitude that every working is an experiment, which I personally love. And I encourage you to take, because you'll be more careful with it, take better notes, etc., etc. But when we're doing our work, I don't know, I could say that after speaking on this for just 11 minutes yesterday, it got real deep to me personally. And what opened up for me was that, man, most of what I do is not evil, right? In daily life. Things that one feels guilt about. Shit, I really hurt that person. I didn't intend to. But you were actually doing something good, and it maybe triggered something in that person that made them feel hurt, right? Someone had done evil to them in the past. It left that mark, that stain on them. But when you were doing good, you don't have to carry that around on you. Now, back to the point from last night about doing workings, right? You're actually working with both hands. You're putting energy into something to actively obstruct, disrupt, or cause displeasure or dysfunction or chaos or discomfort in someone's life. You're doing evil straight up. That is the definition, right? As we went last night, evil is that which we don't like. That is what evil means. So if you're causing a whole situation in someone's life that they're not going to like, you're doing evil. Oh man, all this chat stuff's going on. I haven't been looking. First of all, the illustrious Professor Porterfield has been here. A mentor to me, by the way, guys. If you're not following this guy, follow him. I don't know shit compared to him. Laying down science in the background. All right, well, the book was The Doctrine and Ritual of High Magic. It's on Audible, which is awesome, and it has a very good performance on Audible. And a question in chat, so forces of creation and destruction to leave out morals. Yeah, and that's what I was saying last night. Like, morality was layered onto these principles much later. Historically, much later. 1600s, 1700s. That's when, it wasn't until the 1700s that we really saw the terms good and evil taking on a primarily moral definition. Okay, so, and that was because the church was like, we can use this to control people. This is dope. It's in the book. As long as we change the definitions of the words that are in the book that everyone's reading, We got this, and that certainly is the history of Europe at the time, and why Islam was able to go in and conquer it, and why that's all covered up in history, etc. But yeah, the going back to the idea of you're either doing things out of pure love or out of that malicious hate is really the word. When you're doing left-handed work, we talked more about right-handed work, about the kinder work yesterday. When you're doing left-handed work, you must stimulate in yourself that sense of revulsion and hatred, and you have to. It has to be as if you are utterly disgusted, and that's why we use those incenses and stuff like sulfur. Smells gross. Garlic. You want to burn some garlic and sulfur and asafoetida. That smells disgusting. Throw in some vandal root too. You're going to be fucking grossed out. And that's because you need that energy to do that work. That's why you use that for cursing. Okay? By contrast, when you're doing, and I said it yesterday, when you're doing sort of right-handed work, good work, if there's something that's not sitting right with you in your incense mix or in your oil or whatever, don't use that. It's going to compromise your work. It's part of attuning yourself, and that's what that book talks about so much. We should almost do a book club about it, because it's my favorite book on occultism, straight up. The 3 books I always recommend are Doctrine and Ritual of High Magic, which is that one, The Golden Bough by Fraser, which is really important, and then Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, which is also very important for higher esotericism. But yeah, you can just read Doctrine and Ritual and get to work. It's got more than enough in there. So back to the point. Working with both of these energies, right? Our challenge as workers is to find the stimuli in ourselves, in our own minds, in our own spirits, in our own hearts, and in our environments, right? Images, smells, things like this to bring that about. Your tools as well. I don't use the same I don't even really do left-handed work at my place. I go down to this, I should do a live from there. I go down to this abandoned sugar mill that's completely decrepit and broke down, and there's all kinds of, broken glass and syringes out there. That's where I do my dirty work, because puts me in that mindset, right? It's kind of spooky, it's certainly a little fucking uncomfortable, and I can get in that headspace that I need to be in. Versus my good work, I want to do in my home. I want to do where I'm comfortable. I want to do where I'm happy. I want to basically feel good, and I want to feel as good as possible so as to project to the target that feeling of goodness, right? So if I'm doing love work, if it's major work, I will at least sit there and think back through my wedding and happy moments and feel my heart chakra all happy. But I can get deep on it, The reason we use, to my mind, one of the reasons we use scripture is because it's, for people who've studied scripture, really compelling. You know what I mean? I've been studying that stuff since before I could read, So when I hear those stories, they hit me at a core level. When I hear those turns of phrase, those lines, they hit me at a core level. And they can evoke an entire mood, an entire mindset very quickly. Okay? This is really important to consider, no matter which side you're doing, right? As far as the left-handed work, though, I like to do it at abandoned places. And I like to use a lot of really wicked shit that almost vexes me to use in terms of the smell, but also in terms of just the visual. I alluded to yesterday, if you like creepy things, if you're a spider collector and you think they're beautiful, you shouldn't use it for your dark work, for your left-handed work, because you're not going to have the right energy, okay? But if you are creeped the fuck out by spiders, tarantulas or whatever, and you're making goofer dust, it's probably a good idea to get a live one. Don't tell PETA I said this, but probably a good idea to get a live one and kill the shit out of it with absolute fear and rage. That's probably the way to go, to get that going in you. And then put that in your goofer dust, of course. And that's what we're talking about. If you are not the master of those two energies, think of the chariot, in the deck of the tarot, the two sphinxes, right? Every time you see that image of the dark and the light-headed, which is repeated in a lot of forms throughout tarot. That's what it's talking about, right? The two pillars of the high priestess. Those are Boaz and Yakin, the two pillars outside Solomon's temple, which is a major part of masonry, right? But that's what that means, the black pillar and the white pillar, that positive and negative pole. And it exists on a physical, like very much in terms of physics level, with pushing and pulling, right? The same way it works in an electrical circuit, identical to how it works in an electrical circuit, because they're both just moving energy, okay? But it works on the metaphorical, metaphysical level as well, that abstract level, because that's the energetic circuit of our emotions, and that's way more powerful than our thoughts. So the best way, as we know, to really directly affect emotions in a sensory way is through the nose, because it goes right to the brain. There's no bullshit processing in between your eyes, go to your optic nerve, that goes to your brain. There's something in the middle. Your nose, that's pure detection of energy signatures, right? Chemicals are energy signatures, and that's all your nose detects. Your ears are good, but again, there's processing. They're better than your eyes. Your sense of touch is pretty good, but there's a lot of processing in there. But working with these things in order to manipulate your personal balance of the positive and the negative, the good and the evil, as you need. Now, one thing we also didn't get into last night was really sort of the moralistic side at all. As I said, I wasn't getting into it. I don't intend to get into it. But I know that it's a question I've gotten, and I want to say this, like, and hopefully Professor Porterfield is still in here to get my back on this one. If you have a doubt as to whether your working is justified, you should not do it. If you're concerned about that. If you're not concerned, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Live your life. If you're concerned about the spiritual moral consequences of your work, you need to perform a divination. You should probably even perform a confirming divination. But you can't just while out in hope because you think it's right. Okay? And I would also say before you perform that divination, you should pray for the accuracy of the divination, etc. Enter your house justified, says the man. Indeed, and I should also say, I personally feel, and I will be interested in getting the professor's response here, I feel like if you're doing a justified, properly justified, righteously justified hex, you're actually not doing left-handed work for a number of reasons. One, it doesn't meet the definition of evil. Two, the energy involved is completely different. It's completely different. I don't know if Crossroad King is still hanging out here, but yeah, on that job out in California, we that spirit that we ran out of there, that wasn't left-handed work, dude. Like that was holy work that we did, and there was nothing. The energy to it was specifically of goodness and righteousness, and that has a very distinct character from, goofering someone or doing like that left-handed work. Justice should not be confused with attack. That's I can't say it better than an elder like Professor Porterfield. But that said, depending on your inclination and your practice and your workings, I mean, I'm trying to do it less and less nowadays, but sometimes you throw some shit, or sometimes someone throws some shit at you and it's on a petty level where it's not righteously justified, right? Someone, I don't know, puts some work out on you and it's not, pray to the heavens to relieve this great burden on my spirit, but it's like, this motherfucker just fucked me up. I got a traffic ticket because of him or something, petty again, and you feel like you got to go back on him. I mean, your code's your code. I'm not going to tell you what's what. But when you do that work, that character's different. And I'll also say this, like, there are times when a person can come to me, a client can come to me asking for left-handed work be done. It's not righteously justified. Usually I'll decline it, but if the person is personally hurt enough where I'm like, wow, this person really sucks. It's a petty thing, but I can tell this person's suffering, I may be inclined to return that much suffering back to the person who caused it. Again, I don't think that this is the Lord and his armies are behind me in that work. It's kind of petty, but I don't know. Pisces moon. I feel soft about it, so I got to do it, right? So in that case, that's left-handed work. What I try to do in those cases is remain proportional. I don't try to, go in heavy on people. Again, I try to really give them back everything they gave my client in that case. I don't want to escalate matters ever, right? That's something that I think is really important for a lot of beginner workers to know. Like, it is very tempting to go all the way to the top of the list, cook up that goofer dust and get going. You should never, ever, ever do that. I mean, there's a reason for that shit, right? Like, if someone straight up like violates your family member or there's a murderer who has not received justice, yeah, that's for that. But no, you should not do that to his ex or whatever. That's absolutely not what that's for. And I mean, even hot footing. I'd like to get the professor's take on this. I feel even hot footing is like, you're pushing some boundaries. If you're pushing someone out of town, you're going to disrupt their life. Even, putting someone in a bottle. We do it flippantly a little too much, in my opinion, in this like Instagram culture. We talk about putting someone in a jar, putting someone in a bottle. Like, that's on you. That's on you. But if you are going to do that shit, make sure you keep in mind, you're working with your left hand. Access, okay? Don't be in your cool, rational mind, following the recipe and doing whatever, and this is my organic lemon. Like, be vile about that shit. Be, like, straight up evil about it. If you're gonna do it right. Otherwise, don't fucking do it. I don't know. I haven't made a controversial statement yet tonight, so I think I will make my controversial statement today on this point that I don't like the term baby witch. That's like saying, like, baby marine. There's no such thing as a baby marine. Because when you're a baby marine, you're not a marine yet. You go to boot camp, you learn all this stuff, then you go to basic, and you get certified. Then you're a marine, then you go do the dangerous shit. Okay? The baby marines don't just fucking go and do the dangerous shit. Same thing. If you're a baby witch, stay studying, don't be practicing yet. Okay, I want to see what Professor says here. Because we don't live together, we live too far apart, so we don't see the results of banishing a person from their community over petty shit. Oh, true that. I mean, and this is, as you guys know, I don't know if the professor knows, he probably does, one of my favorite topics. Like, this work is very weird to do long distance. It wasn't intended to be long distance work. I don't like doing distance work. I know it's more expensive to get me on site to dig in your yard, but like, I'm not going to burn a candle on my desk for this kind of work. That's not what it's for. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I got to get that dirt in my hands. I got to put my shovel in that dirt if I want to be sure that work is going to work the way it's supposed to work. That's me. I'm positive there's a bazillion people on IG who say that fixed candle will do the damn same thing. So, I'm not picking a fight. But yeah, that's it's about personal concern. It's about spirit, right? Like, their spirit's going to be where they are. Their spirit's not in my fucking basement where I'm burning that candle. Yeah, I can conjure with it. Yeah, spirit is omnipresent and you can, concentrate it in an area and blah, 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 blah. But if it's somebody I never met that you sent me one picture of and I got their name and their birth date, that'll get me somewhere with them. But if I'm walking around in their fucking backyard, like, we got them. So, thing to think about. Like, the way a lot of the ethics of this work and a lot of the nature of this work it's very strained and strange here on the internet. But, I guess, what are we going to do? We're not going to go back in time. Like, I'm glad for the internet. Obviously, this is helpful to us. Anyway, I'm jabbering. Back to good and evil. Okay? I think the main focus of anyone who's considering becoming a pro worker, or really even anyone who's going to step it up and say, I'm going to do both sides of this, you got to first go to that place in yourself, not while you're working, okay? Because you have to tap into it later when you're working. But if you don't know it, you don't want to find that on the job. You know what I mean? You got to know that place in yourself damn well. And you have to master it. That's the fundamental. And you have to explore its depths. You have to explore its... And on the flip side, the heights, right, of the glories, right? But you know, that's why they say conjure men work with God and the devil, right? Like you gotta... And as the good professor says, then you got to beat the devil at his own game. You have to have the nerve, and I relent before I steal the man's excellent speech. But yeah, man, you got to have the nerve and the wit to fucking make the best of it, right? And that means, again, going back to the psychological level, the emotional, spiritual level, whatever you want to call it, you've got to have that mental acuity to tap into those emotional reserves, those extremely potent parts of the psyche, right? And it's like pro wrestling, dude. Like, it can't be real, but because then you're fucking, you know, actually fully evil. But you gotta fake it and make it like it's real, you know, like to the point where you believe it. But you have to do it with that mastery. I can't articulate it better than that, right? Like, and I've definitely had it happen in myself, man, where when you don't have that kind of mastery on it, yeah, you can wake up that next day a motherfucker, and that shit can last for weeks, and you just feel different, and it'll take whatever, you know, it'll take you noticing, hopefully, and remedying it to balance it back up. But yeah, that'll happen. And you know, I've talked about it with other workers too. Like, you end up doing a lot of left-handed work, and then you start craving certain things, food, sex, smoke, all those sort of lower vices. And it can get heavy. Sweets, you know, and then those energies can start to really perpetuate themselves inside you. And then you get pulled away, you know. And that's why, to my mind, that's why people most often err on the side of, you're only going to do one, just do good work, because if you get pulled away to that, that's all good. But, I mean, in this tradition specifically, like, we're two heads, you know? We work with both hands, because that's stand in the middle. Again, it's both intimidating and awesome to have Professor Porterfield in the peanut gallery. You reap what you sow. Yeah, the seeds you plant is what grows. That is it doesn't get more basic and elegant than that, right? That's how this whole thing works. And in that sense, you know, approach your work with conscience, with intention at least. Look, if you're out there to be the, you know, baddest ass two-head out there, do what you got to do, man. Like, again, like I said yesterday, I'm not here to preach moral doctrine. That's not neither my place nor my expertise. But be intentional. Be thoughtful about it. Be thoughtful about all your workings, but especially when you're playing with sort of primary energies like this, right? Like, these energies are inside you. Once you rev them up, they keep themselves going pretty fucking well. So learn them first, identify them first, locate them in your consciousness of your body. Like I said last night, like, where do you feel it when you're getting your evil going, when you're doing your shadow work and going down to your lowest, most sinister depths? Where is that in your body? What does it feel like? Write that down, okay? Likewise, when you're ascending to your most celestial, divine, you know, sublimated heights, where you feel like your spirit is ready to ascend and achieve pure union with the Almighty, where do you feel that? How does it feel? Write that down. What does it remind you of? What does it smell like there? All those things are important. You need to go back there in yourself. You need to master going back between those two places. That's the crossroads in you. Wow, look at that. That should be like a catchphrase. Yeah, same in the chat. I don't do, like I said, I don't do left-handed work in my house. I go to this abandoned building down here. I might get the roost together and make the doll in my house, you know what I mean? But I won't even wake it up in my house. But yes, that's, I think, I also don't like doing left-handed work at the graveyard, personally. I think that's, personally, at least my graveyard that I go to for dirt and shit, that, like, I know those dudes, those spirits, whatever, like, we kind of keep it pretty light over there, you know what I mean? Like, we have generally a positive rapport. I'm not trying to go in there and, like, rile everyone up. If there was enough graveyards around here, I might use one for only that kind of stuff. And I know it's a venerable tradition in the work. I'm not gonna disparage anyone or say that's not a good way to work. I'm just saying I don't feel right going by like I know a lot of spirits. Like that's weird for me to do, I guess, because we have focused, positive, constructive relationships, you know. But yeah, there's ample reason to do that, but certainly do it outside. I like to go, go on the top of a mountain here in Colorado. We got that. I'll go, empty lots. Any abandoned buildings is great. Any place, right, that if you someone drove you there, threw you in a trunk, drove you there, pulled you out, you'd be like, this place is fucked up. That's where you should do that work. Okay? If you're like, oh, this is kind of beautiful and peaceful, don't do that there. That's my take on it. All right, this one's gotten kind of rambly, but I think it's been a good one. That said, I got to go tend to the altars. So Professor Porterfield brings up a good point then. It is separation from geographical community. Lots of folks don't know who's a murderer or son of a bitch at any given graveyard, which brings up the point that if you're just going to the graveyard and grabbing dirt, you're fucking stupid. A, because you don't know. And B, because you have a thing in your fucking pocket that'll tell you all that. There's a name on the stone. You type it in that thing in your pocket, the years, and you can find something. Okay? So Google a grave at least lightly before you get in there. I think people are foolish with this. I think people don't even really generally consider, like, they think grave dirt's grave dirt's grave dirt. I mean, when you're buying grave dirt online, whose grave is that from? Whose grave is that from? Do they know? Is it just from one grave? Because they must have emptied out that grave. I think it is foolishness. And people who just go in and, grab the dirt, pay, and be out. What is that? You better sit and get to know that spirit first. Are you sure you want that dirt? Google him. Do you still know anything about him? I mean, my guy, and this is like the spirit I work with the most. You guys know William, right? So William, I knew that he was in the Marines, so I was like, all right, whatever, he's cavalry commander. I need a soldier dirt. Cool. And then as soon as I started sitting there, I was like, this dude's heavy. I need to pray for his soul. And I elevated his soul. I sat there for half an hour elevating his soul, and it was hard work, actually. And I was like, why was that? Right? Then I Googled him when I left. And indeed, what did William do in the Army? Oh, he was part of a fucking massacre of Native American women and children. So I got soldier dirt and murderer dirt in one, which was cool. And what did I also find? And this is why I work with William primarily now, is that the dude discovered a gold mine and was the CEO or president of the gold mining firm for many years. That was actually before he was involved in a massacre, if you can imagine the psyche of this guy. But yeah, and then I learned, well, it was pretty obvious in the graveyard because it was right there, but it was helpful to Google him, that he lost his wife and child during childbirth. So now I was like, okay, we can make a deal together, William, because you seem like a surly motherfucker, but I bet you would love for me to pray for the soul of your child and your own. And that's how you deal with a guy like that, one of these Wild West cowboy types. But point being, a little bit of internet research showed me a whole lot more that I could be doing with him. Indeed, I ended up driving to the town where he found the gold mine on the night of the new moon and dug up some Crossroads dirt from there and fed it to his dirt. And he rather likes that. It's a good combination. But But yeah, get to know them too and get to know their offerings. He doesn't like tobacco so much. Loves whiskey. Rye whiskey specifically. Not just JD, but rye whiskey. He loves rye whiskey. Which makes sense too. And, I mean, I don't know. One thing that I like to do for him sometimes is like play music from his era, which you can find. Again, use that thing in your pocket, man. It's connected to like a huge chunk of human knowledge and information. And if you're not using it, you're kind of missing out. I don't know what to say about that. Another thing about graveyard working that I want to say in general is like, at least from what we read in Hyatt, which we can go ahead on a whole separate thing and debate the authenticity and historicity of Hyatt, which is a good discussion to have, but we're not doing that now. At least from what we read in Hyatt, like, usually you would go to the grave of someone you knew right after they got buried. You wouldn't just like go wander a graveyard and find a grave that looked good. It had to be fresh. It had to be before it rained. That's pretty specific. There's reasons for why it makes sense that someone who's interred for a long time would sort of like decay, essentially outward, right? Like their body's breaking down, that energy's moving outward. So it should be in all that dirt, right? That's how that works. But the idea of grabbing the actual fleeing spirit fresh is what it's about. And that's how you catch them off guard, and then the whole concept there is mixing it with, hot pepper and stuff, because they're fresh spirit. They don't know what the fuck's going on, and you've just sort of like ambushed them and made them very uncomfortable and said, listen, I need a hand here and I can give you a break. We're way off topic here. And not really, though, because, that kind of goes back to morality in this kind of work, because that seems amoral by our standards. But when you reference back to the cultures that type of work came from, because that's definitely from a Congo tradition, not a Yoruba tradition, a hunting and trapping culture, that makes perfect sense. That's how the world works. And then now we can tie this back to the idea of law, of God's law, because God's law is not moralistic. God's law is absolute. It's how the world works. In God's law, there's nothing that only gives. Everything must also take. In God's law, nothing only consumes. Everything also excretes. That's just how it works. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe in it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether you want to do it or not, that's how you work. And so working within that, right, is always good work. Violating that, introducing paradox into that, right, is by definition sorcery or evil work, right? Drying up the rains during the rainy season, as we see in St. Cyprian, he admits is evil workings, causing the tides to push the fish out, because it's working against nature, working against the operation and the mechanism of the universe is evil work. All right, this one has been a hell of a ramble. I got to get in there and get to the altars, because it's almost 1 o'clock, and I got some prayers to say. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a star-studded chat, and bravo. I love it. I actually didn't think anyone was going to tune in, and I've had like at least 12 of you guys steady on here. Oh, before I forget, shit, I almost forgot, and I was supposed to say this in the beginning. It's officially announced. My first class at Ritual Craft is coming April 5th, I want to say. It's on altars. We're going to go over the types of altars, sort of the different implements for the altar, and what they symbolize and are used for and their function, the fundamentals of altar construction, and then we're going to design altars for your own space. It's a 2-hour class. It should be awesome. It's going to be at the current old Ritual Craft. But coming in May, they have a beautiful, huge new location. If any of you are in the Denver area or can be in the Denver area, I got classes April, May, June, and I'm sure more will come, on everything from hoodoo conjure stuff to Jewish folk magic. I even got one class that I'm extremely excited about. It's called The System of Sorcery, and it's basically, yeah, magic for engineers and computer scientists, which I'm geeked out, excited to teach that one. What time on the 5th? It's 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I think it's the 5th. What you should do is check my profile, because I just posted the link to the school and the school's post, and then you can register all through there. That one's going to be really fun. I've got some random stuff coming up too. The Jewish Folk Magic first one is very cool, and it is right before Passover, and anyone who attends that class in person will be invited to my parents' house in Denver for Passover dinner. If you've never been to a Seder, it's pretty cool. If you've never been to a Persian Jewish Seder, it's even different than if you have been to Seders. That's still something different. There's a lot of wine to drink. Yes, Professor Porterfield, I will be seeing you in November. I don't think I'm teaching Conjure Gala, but I haven't talked to Lou about it yet, so maybe I am. But I will definitely be seeing you, and very excited for your class. I hear you're doing the Graveyard class, which I'm super psyched on, and I heard you might do a Crossroads class. I don't know if that's the word on the wire. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. I will catch you guys. Who knows? Maybe I'll do another one of these tomorrow night, because this is fun. All right, be well, and of course, tune into the Patreon if you want to see the other ones. Check the profile for the Patreon link and the Ritual Craft School link to look at the whole class schedule, all that good stuff. Also, I've got a post, if you go a little back, that has all my classes broken down by category. Right on. Thank you guys for tuning in at what must be a late hour for at least some of you. And be safe out there. Good luck working. We'll talk soon.